Today we're going to review the 2024 Nightster in Billiard Gray. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. We're at Tim's Harley Davidson to review the 2024 Nightster 975 in Billiard Gray. Now, before we jump into the review, I want to thank today's sponsor, Indy Ridge. So Indy Ridge makes the boots that I have on my feet right now. They make very, very high quality motorcycle riding boots, but they've got a casual looking style that allows you to wear them anywhere, and that's what I've done for probably the last 2 years. You almost always see me with Indy Ridge boots on my feet, and that's because they are so extremely comfortable, but then they've got all the safety aspects of a true motorcycle boot. So be sure and check them out. Use the link down in the description. Now I'm going to give you guys a full walk around. We're going to break down this bike piece by piece, but before I do that, I want to throw out a disclaimer, and that's that although this is a 2024 model bike, this is what's known as a carryover model. So all the 2024s that are out at the time of this video going up, nothing has changed on those bikes except for the color. That's the case with this Nightster. So if you've watched my review on the Nightster before, no need to watch this one again. If this is your first time looking into the Nightster, or you're looking for a second opinion on the Nightster, because I'm brutally honest about these motorcycles, stick around and I'll show you everything this bike has to offer. All right, so I'll give you guys a quick walk around of this bike, let you see it while we talk about some of the specs. So MSRP on this bike is going to start at $11,999, and that is in the Billiard Gray colorway that you're looking at now. You can also get this bike in black, so two colors in this one for $24. Your seat height is 27.1 inches. Ground clearance is 4.5 inches. Your fuel capacity, 3.1 gallons. Your running order weight, so gas, oil, all that good stuff, is 481 pounds. Horsepower is 91. Torque is 72, and your miles per gallon is going to be 52. And I do also want to mention that this bike comes standard with ABS and traction control. That said, let's jump into this thing. So I want to start by talking about the styling on this bike. Now, I know this is not everyone's cup of tea, but I do think Harley Davidson did a really good job making this look like the older Evo Sporties that went away a couple years ago. More of that iconic Harley styling. Not trying to say it is one of those bikes or that it holds a candle to one of those, but they did a really good job in making it close. And when I say that, I'm kind of thinking about like the Sportster S, which is its own thing, and in my opinion should have carried a different name than the Sportster name because it is so drastically different. Although that's an amazing bike performance-wise, as is this one, I think these things maybe should have gotten their own name. So the good thing about doing these videos at the dealership, there's literally bikes everywhere. So what you're looking at is the Harley Davidson 48 model. It is a 1200cc Sportster with the old Evo style motor. That's what I'm talking about when I say traditional Harley styling. And then a lot of people will think of something like this, the Iron. I mean, that's pretty iconic Harley Davidson. So you can kind of see the styling cues in the Nightster in this bike. Very similar tank shape, your rear fender, front fender. I mean, overall, other than the engine, these bikes look very, very similar. So one thing I've started to enjoy doing is sitting on the bike as if I were riding it. So it kind of gives you that perspective. You see what you would be looking at. I'll go over all the controls so you can kind of get familiar with that. So if you're going to start the bike, this is your run kill switch. So you'd flip your switch here, hit this button on top just to start this bike up. This is your traction control button. This is your mode button. So you can see we're currently in sport mode. So you have a rain mode, regular road mode, and then back to sport mode. That's every time I ride one of these bikes, that's where I leave it. That's where it's the most fun. If you are a newer rider, still kind of getting your feet underneath you, maybe don't do that, because what that's going to do is make your throttle ultra responsive, whereas this rain mode will kind of dial it back and keep you from breaking that rear tire loose as much, which yes, that is what traction control is for, but it'll just kind of mellow the bike out a little bit. On this switch housing, you also have your hazard lights. So you move over here, you have your trip button. So what that's gonna do, you see right now, we can see our fuel and our mileage. Hit your trip button, you have trip A, trip B, how many miles till empty, your clock, and then a digital RPM readout, whereas your speedo is the analog readout. Your turn signals are here. This is a little different for Harley Davidson. Typically left signals on the left side, right signals on the right side. Most people, in my experience, especially if you're coming from any kind of metric bike, are used to both of them being in one switch. So that may work out a little bit better for people. You also have your horn, your passing lights, bright lights, and your low beam is up here. So you're gonna have all your warning indicators filled in the speedo right here. This is a brake reservoir. It's one of those things you assume people know, but this may be the first time anyone's ever watched a video about a motorcycle. So we're gonna try to just broaden this where it fits everybody. On your clutch here, I do want to point out that your lever is adjustable. So as you turn this, the clutch will move farther away or closer to the handlebars, depending on your grip and where you need it. Now, for those of you that are sad that I didn't start this bike up, you are not missing anything. This engine, this RevMax platform, is extremely quiet, as is a factory exhaust. So moving up to the front of the bike, this is one thing a lot of the traditional Sportster guys didn't like, this big radiator here. Liquid cooling is a good thing. If you're sitting in traffic, it's gonna keep the bike much, much cooler. But as the engine stays cooler, that equals more power. So as your engine heats up and stuff, you will literally lose power. So this is a good thing, keeps your bike at a constant, safe temperature, doesn't overheat, and not quite as hot on you personally as you're sitting in traffic. So moving up to the front, you'll see that you do have a single disc front brake, but it is a pretty big brake, so plenty of stopping power for a sub 500-pound bike. The wheels on this thing out of the box are not terrible. Wheels are pretty pricey to upgrade, so I do like that Harley gave you a decent looking wheel on this bike. Your fender is a little sleek, slim, sporty looking thing. I do like that as well. Not as much coverage, so when you're riding in like wet conditions or whatever, it is gonna throw a little bit more on there, but that's the trade-off for a good looking fender. So we move around to the front of the bike. You do have an LED headlight. So I'll turn the wheel so you can see that brake is a Brembo brake. Again, if you're newer to motorcycling or you're not sure what that means, Brembo is one of the best names in all of brakes, period, cars and motorcycles alike. So that is a good sign that those are on there. Moving around to this side, you'll see there is a lot of stuff going on here. Most of that ties back in with your cooling. So all the stuff that you see here on the front, all again, you know, radiators, radiator guards, etc. So you'll see that you have mid controls on this bike, which I really, really like. I was very critical of Harley Davidson for the bike that came before this one and the Sportster S, because they list these motorcycles as sport bikes, but the Sportster S had forward controls. No sport bikes are ever going to come with a forward control. It's not a proper riding position for a sport bike. Most sport bikes actually come with what's called rear sets, so your pegs, instead of like this one, they're straight down, they would put them behind you. Now with that, if you are a taller rider, this bike may not be as comfortable for you. I'm not sure, I'll throw it up on the screen. I'm not sure off the top of my head if they make a bar for the front of this, like what I call an engine guard, but a lot of people, myself included, put them on bikes so that you can put your feet somewhere when you need to stretch out on your longer rides. Now another thing I didn't mention when I was doing the cockpit review was the mirrors. I do like these clip-on style mirrors on the end of the bars. It keeps the front profile of this bike nice and clean. They don't stick up nearly as much. And I'll give you an example, what I'm talking about here. And then again, on the Softail Standard, how these stick up. Yes, these do stick out. And a lot of people are gonna take them off. Don't. I get they don't look the best. No mirror is gonna look good. But as a safety feature, coming from a guy that does a lot of unsafe things, you still want mirrors on your bike, guys. Going back to the seat that I showed you to lift up to put fuel in, you're gonna notice that there is no passenger seat on this bike. That can be changed. You can put a passenger pad. I think they probably make a 2-up seat, so a seat for a rider and passenger all made into one. But then you're going to also have to do passenger pegs because your passenger has nowhere to put their feet. Moving around to the back of the bike, again, Harley has to be legal, so they're going to give you this little tail section that has a tag light. You've got your little reflector here. Legally, I'm not telling you to change this or modify it, but there are ways to clean that up if you get what I'm trying to say. So again, same thing on the back with your brakes. You do have Brembo brakes, so this bike, very fast, quick little bike, makes really good power for how much it weighs. That RevMax engine revs really, really high. So with that, you've got brakes that will stop it equally as good. Your suspension is adjustable on the rear, so you see these little dots. In your owner's manual, it will tell you based on your weight where to adjust this. You should get a little wrench when you buy the bike as well that will let you adjust this nut to drive this spring up or down depending on where you need it. That's something that always gets overlooked. People never take the time to do that, but you will get a much better ride out of your motorcycle if you do. Likewise, if you've been riding around forever, you know, and you've got it set up for you, but you throw a passenger, you need to adjust it again for that additional weight. Now, I mentioned earlier the key fob when I was showing you guys the keys. So starting this bike, you do not need the key. You need that key fob, but you do not need the key. So some of you may have noticed this keyhole. What that's going to do is lock your forks in this lock position. So essentially, I would put the key in here, turn it, remove it, and that would lock this front end. It's not locked, but we'll pretend it is. And what that's going to do, if you stand this bike upright like you were going to push it, it only allows the bike to be pushed in a circle because the wheel is locked at that angle. So as long as you have your security fob in your pocket or somewhere on you, you can start this bike, which is a nice feature. You just have to be sure you always have your fob on you. Make sure the battery's not dead. There is a PIN code that you can set up, so in case you were to lose, break, your fob dies, whatever the case may be, you can still start your motorcycle. You're not stranded. But again, that's something I don't see nearly enough people doing. So that pretty much sums up the walk around, showing you the features without going too far down the rabbit hole. So let's talk about who this bike is for. So oddly enough, this is one of Harley Davidson's cheapest motorcycles, at least at the time of posting this video. And I say that because the other 2024 model Harley Davidsons have not come out yet, so you never quite know what Harley's going to do. But at a starting MSRP of $12,000, this is currently the cheapest Harley Davidson that you can get. So this is for the person that is just getting into the Harley Davidson world. Now, unless you're very familiar with motorcycles, so if you've been riding all your life, you've just never ridden a Harley, and you know you're going to go across country or through multiple states or whatever, then sure, maybe you jump on something like the Road Glide. But I mean, you're talking between 800 and 900 pounds for something like that, whereas you're under 5 on this. You're also talking, that's a Road Glide special. So I mean, you're gonna be in the 30s on that thing, whereas you're at 12 on this one. So what I mean by getting into Harleys is also your first time getting into motorcycles, or you're coming from something comparable, say a Yamaha Bolt, a Honda Rebel, what have you. Also very easy to ride. So again, I mentioned that 500 pounds, and yeah, I know 500 pounds may still sound like a lot, but keep in mind, you're not holding up 500 pounds. All your weight is on your tires. You're literally balancing it, and it's sitting, stationary. When the bike is sitting still, that's when it's at its heaviest, and I promise you this thing feels like nothing, especially compared to some of the other models that Harley Davidson has out there. Now, if you're going to be doing a lot of long distance riding, not my first pick. As we talked about, you can put a passenger on this bike, but if you plan to have a passenger often, also not my first pick. You just don't have a ton of room to do that, so you guys just aren't going to be nearly as comfortable. But if you do a lot of solo riding, you like to have fun, hit corners, do stuff like that, or you don't want to spend $24,000 on a lowrider ST, Well, for half of that, you can get something like the Nightster. Now, if there were any questions that I didn't answer in this video, anything I didn't go over, anything you think I know that you want to know about this bike, be sure and let me know down in the comments, and I'll try my best to get back to you. That's going to be it for this one, guys. Please subscribe if you're not already. Really trying to hit 50,000 subs this year. This is a doable goal, but I need you to subscribe. Like the video if you enjoyed it, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.